If you thought this 49ers offseason was going to be nothing but minor tweaks, let me stop you right there. There's real smoke around the front office. There's an offensive chess piece being floated that could turn Kyle Shanahan's playbook into a weekly nightmare for defenses. There's a trench move that could quietly fix a problem we all watched get exposed. And then there's the family storyline, one that sounds like a movie, unless someone snatches it away at the last second. Stick with me, faithful. And yeah, tap like and subscribe if you want daily Niners talk that doesn't sugarcoat anything. Here's the question. Do you trust the building structure, or do you trust the talent on the field? Because by the end, I'm coming back to the one detail that ties all of this together. So let's start where the tension actually begins, upstairs. Bay Area columnist and radio host Dieter Kurtenbach jumped on the Gold Standard podcast with Rob Stats Guerrera and said there's been conversation inside the organization about hiring someone to the front office who would function as a de facto day-to-day GM. He even put a time frame on it. If it happens, it could happen in the next couple weeks. Now, he was careful with it. He flat out said it might not happen. Nothing is confirmed. But when that kind of idea is even being discussed, it tells you the franchise is at least considering reshaping how decisions get made. And that matters because it brushes right up against John Lynch's role. Not in a he's gone way. There's nothing like that here. And the same conversation points to Lynch being too valuable as the face and ambassador of the franchise. But valuable doesn't automatically mean untouchable in terms of who has the final say on every move. A clearer chain of command can be a good thing. It can also get messy fast if it turns into a quiet power struggle. You already know how the faithful will split on this. One side will say, finally, tighten the process, stop missing on difference makers. And they'll point to the obvious pain point, the massive move up for Trey Lance back in 2021, and watching other elite players from that class become cornerstone guys elsewhere. Another side will say, hold up, this team has been too close too many times. Don't rip up the blueprint. And I get that fear. When you're living in a Super Bowl window, you don't want the foundation shaking while you're trying to make a playoff run. Here's the thing. If you're going to bring in a true day-to-day roster architect, it has to be about protecting what's elite and fixing what's been expensive. Cleaner decision-making, better draft hit rate, more accountability with the middle of the roster, the spots that decide whether you survive December injuries and still have juice for January. That's the why. But the how is everything. Because there's a clock on this conversation with the combine coming up and the media microscope turning into a spotlight. If a hire happens, the message will matter just as much as the name. It'll tell you whether the Niners are chasing stability or preparing for a bigger shift. And while we're talking about the identity of the team, let's talk about the identity of the offense. Because when you talk about the 49ers offense, you're really talking about stress. Stress on linebackers, stress on safeties, stress on defensive coordinators trying to pick their poison against Shanahan. George Kittle is still the heartbeat of that locker room, but the league keeps proving one thing. You can never have too many dudes who create mismatches. That's why this tight end free agent conversation even exists. If the 49ers want to stay ahead of the curve, adding another versatile tight end could unlock extra layers in an offense that already lives off motion, play action, and getting guys in space. And yes, the name that makes people lean toward the screen is Kyle Pitts. Just hearing it, you can feel the, wait, what if? Pitts is a matchup problem by design. Linebackers can't run with him. Corners can't outmuscle him. Safeties end up needing help. In a Shanahan system, a player like that can line up inline, in the slot, out wide, wherever the matchup is soft. Now, to be clear, we're talking about possibilities here. Not a done deal. Not an announcement. Just a fit that, on paper, makes defensive coordinators sweat. Imagine 12 personnel with Kittle and Pitts together. Think about that for a second. You're forcing the defense to choose between staying in base and getting cooked in coverage, or going nickel and getting pushed around in the run game. Either way, someone's uncomfortable. And that's the whole point. This is where the comment section gets spicy, because half of you will say, we don't need another toy, we need the offensive line. And I'm not going to pretend that's a bad point. Protecting your quarterback and keeping the offense on schedule matters. Third and long is where drives die, and you don't want to live there. But the other half will argue, Shanahan wins with leverage. Give him another chess piece and watch the red zone and chunk plays explode. Both sides are talking about winning. They're just choosing different routes. The tension here isn't, is the offense good? It's, what's the ceiling? Do you want to be excellent, or do you want to be unfair? Because one more weapon changes how teams game plan you on Wednesday, not just how you look on Sunday. And while we're imagining linebackers panicking over assignments, the defense needs to bring that same kind of panic back, especially up front. We've all seen it. When the 49ers' defensive front isn't dictating terms, everything behind it gets harder. That's why there's been talk about upgrading the defensive line this offseason. One name that keeps making sense as a revisit is Draymond Jones, the same guy the Niners were linked to around last year's trade deadline before Baltimore ended up getting him. Back then, not making a move was understandable. Mid-season transitions aren't easy. You're learning a new scheme, new terminology, new techniques, and you're doing it on a weekly game plan cycle. Plus, there's the cost in draft capital. But here's what stands out. In Baltimore, the sack number wasn't flashy, 2.5 sacks, but he generated 31 pressures. That's real disruption. Pressures change timing, and timing is what keeps quarterbacks comfortable. And what I like about the fit is versatility. The 49ers value defensive linemen who can line up in different spots, create matchup flexibility, and help disguise pressure packages. Jones fits that mold, which explains why the interest was there in the first place. With a full offseason to integrate, you're not forcing it on the fly. You're building chemistry, roles, and usage that actually makes sense for what the defense wants to be. You're going to ask, if it made sense, why didn't they do it then? Fair. Maybe the hesitation was about the pick compensation more than the player. Free agency changes that equation because you're not surrendering assets, you're negotiating money and term. And if the contract projection is short-term, that can line up perfectly with a win-now roster that still needs flexibility. You're not locking yourself into a long commitment during an eventual transition. You're buying impact in the window. Let me say this. The 49ers defense has an identity. It's supposed to feel suffocating. It's supposed to turn third and medium into third and long into a punt. Adding the right interior presence helps your edges, helps your blitz looks, helps your coverage because the quarterback can't just sit there and pat the ball. Picture Levi's Stadium in a big moment. Noise pouring down, the front shifting, the quarterback trying to ID protection, and he's wrong. That's the kind of advantage you build in the trenches. And speaking of edges, there's a storyline that hits the heart, hits the brand, and hits the salary cap all at the same time. The Bosa brothers. I'll be real with you. Seeing Nick Bosa and Joey Bosa in the same 49ers uniform is the kind of idea that makes the faithful dream big. They've both made it known they'd like to play together at some point, and with Joey heading toward the open market, the concept feels more possible than it did before. But dreams in the NFL have to fit the cap and the reality of roles. The Niners need pass rush help. Last season's production didn't match the standard this franchise expects. Bringing Joey would be about adding an experienced pass rush specialist who can still win quickly, even if he's not the same every-down monster he was early in his career. It's about turning certain snaps into advantages, especially in obvious passing situations. Now here comes the twist. The Tennessee Titans hired Robert Saleh as head coach, and Gus Bradley is there as defensive coordinator, one of the most familiar connections Joey could ask for. That relationship matters. Comfort matters. Scheme fit matters. And Tennessee has something else going for them, more financial flexibility. When you're not carrying the same kind of quarterback cap pressure, you can throw more money at a veteran edge if you want to. So the faithful is going to split again. One side will say, make it happen. Bring Joey home to the Bay and let the brothers hunt. The other side will say, don't pay for nostalgia, pay for production. And that's the right debate, because the name carries emotion, but the roster has to carry championships. The question is value. What does Joey cost? What does he realistically give you? And what does it force you to sacrifice elsewhere? There's also risk. Investing heavily in a veteran with a history of physical wear can shrink your margin for error. On the flip side, ignoring an opportunity to add legitimate edge juice can cost you in a conference that punishes comfortable quarterbacks. You don't get to play soft in January. So yeah, this scenario is alive. Either we get a potential reunion that would light up Levi's Stadium, or we watch Joey land somewhere else, maybe even in a spot that makes this story sting. Be honest, would it hurt more to miss out on Joey, or to watch the pass rush stay thin while the window tightens? And that brings us back to the big picture. 4 storylines, 1 offseason, and 1 underlying theme: direction. The building might get restructured. The offense might get even more matchup heavy. The defensive front is clearly looking for answers. And the Bosa reunion is hanging out there as the kind of move that could shift the vibe overnight, if the numbers and the timing ever line up. Remember the question from the start: structure or talent? The real answer might be both. Clean up the decision-making so the talent hits its ceiling. Because Super Bowl windows don't wait for perfect organizational comfort. Now I want it from you. If you had to pick one priority, what's the move? Front office clarity, another weapon for Shanahan, a trench upgrade, or making a real run at Joey Bosa? Drop your take in the comments, hit like and subscribe. Faithful, we're not letting this offseason happen quietly.